Let me tell you a profound truth that most financial experts won't dare to say. You're exactly where you deserve to be. Harsh? Perhaps. But as someone who has spent decades studying the ancient Jewish wisdom of wealth and helping thousands transform their financial lives, I need you to hear this. Look at the stark contrast. While you're drowning in debt, unable to sleep at night, others are building generational wealth using principles that have been proven for over 3,000 years. The same principles I'm about to share with you. The difference isn't luck, inheritance, or even intelligence. It's something far more fundamental. You see, there's a reason why Jewish communities have historically prospered, even in the face of persecution and starting from nothing. It's not because they're special or chosen. It's because they understand and apply timeless principles that most people ignore or reject. The same principles that could transform your financial reality, if only you're willing to face some uncomfortable truths. Let me ask you something. Do you really think your debt problem is about not having enough money? If you're nodding your head, you're already wrong. I've seen people making six figures who are just as trapped as someone making minimum wage. Why? Because the problem isn't in your wallet. It's between your ears. The Talmud teaches us, who is rich? One who is happy with what they have. But you're doing the opposite. You're living a lie, trying to maintain an image you can't afford, buying things you don't need, with money you don't have, to impress people who don't care. And deep down, you know this is true. Your spending habits aren't random. They're symptoms of a deeper issue. Every time you swipe that credit card, every impulsive purchase, every "I deserve this" moment, these are emotional decisions masquerading as financial ones. The Talmud warns us about this, saying, more than the calf wants to suck, the cow wants to nurse. Meaning, your desire to spend often exceeds your actual needs. But here's what makes this situation even more tragic. You're not just wasting money, you're wasting your life's potential. Every dollar you spend on interest is a dollar that could have been invested in your future. Every month you delay taking action is another month you remain a slave to your creditors. As Proverbs 22:7 states clearly, the borrower is slave to the lender. How much longer are you willing to live in financial slavery? Let me tell you about David, a student of mine who came to me last year. He was making $120,000 annually, but was $80,000 in debt. He had the newest iPhone, designer clothes, and ate at fancy restaurants. He thought he had a money problem, but what he really had was a wisdom problem. Today, after applying the principles I'm about to share with you, he's debt-free and building wealth. The difference? He finally admitted what you need to admit, that your current financial situation is entirely your fault. This might sting, but consider it tough love. Our sages teach that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is speak harsh truths. Your financial problems aren't because of the economy, your job, or bad luck. They're because you've been operating on financial wisdom that's about as deep as a puddle. But here's the good news. Just as our ancestors found ways to prosper even in the harshest conditions, you too can transform your financial reality. The wisdom that has helped Jewish communities build and preserve wealth for generations is available to you. The question is, are you humble enough to learn it? Are you willing to admit that everything you thought you knew about money might be wrong? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 5 critical steps that will revolutionize your relationship with money. These aren't just tips or tricks. They're fundamental principles drawn from thousands of years of Jewish financial wisdom. Principles that have created more millionaires and preserved more family wealth than any modern financial strategy. But before we continue, I need to know, are you ready to be honest with yourself? Are you prepared to face some uncomfortable truths about your relationship with money? Because if you're looking for comfortable lies or quick fixes, you might as well stop watching now. This message isn't for the faint of heart. It's for those who are truly ready to transform their financial destiny. Shall we begin the real journey to financial wisdom? Let's diagnose why you're failing with money. And yes, I use the word failing intentionally, because that's exactly what you're doing. Failing yourself, failing your family, and failing your future. But unlike most people who'll sugarcoat this for you, I'm going to show you exactly why. You think your problem is a lack of money? Let me be crystal clear. That's a lie you tell yourself to avoid responsibility. I've seen people making $30,000 a year build wealth, while others making $300,000 spiral into debt. The difference isn't income, it's wisdom and discipline, two things you're currently lacking. Let's look at your behavior, and I want you to be honest with yourself. When was the last time you checked your bank statement and actually understood where every dollar went? You're probably avoiding it, because deep down, you know the truth would shame you. The Talmud teaches us a person's true character is revealed through three things: their cup, how they behave when drinking; their pocket, how they handle money; and their anger. Right now, your pocket is revealing a character that's weak, undisciplined, and afraid of reality. You're living what I call the modern slave's lifestyle. Here's what it looks like. You get your paycheck, feel momentarily rich, and then watch it vanish within days. You're buying $5 coffees while having $50,000 in credit card debt. You're financing a car that's worth more than your annual savings. You're trying to look wealthy instead of building wealth. The Talmud calls this stealing from your future self, and that's exactly what you're doing. Let me share a hard truth. Your smartphone that you're probably watching this on, did you really need the latest model? That subscription service you barely use, why haven't you cancelled it? That new outfit you bought to boost your confidence, was it worth the interest you're paying on your credit card? These aren't just purchases. They're symptoms of a deeper problem. You're addicted to immediate gratification. The Jewish sages teach us about the concept of Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination. In financial terms, it's that voice telling you, buy now, worry later. It's the impulse making you spend money you don't have on things you don't need. And you're letting it win. Every single time. Here's a perfect example. Last week, one of my students showed me his credit card statement. He spent $847 last month on food delivery. When I asked him to check his kitchen, guess what? His fridge was full of expired groceries he never cooked. This isn't just poor financial planning, it's a complete disconnect from reality. The Torah teaches us Bal Tashchit, the prohibition against needless waste. Yet here you are, wasting not just money, but opportunity. You're probably thinking, but I need to live a little. Really? Is that what you call living? Being one missed paycheck away from financial disaster? The Jewish concept of true living isn't about accumulating stuff. It's about building security and creating value. But you're doing the opposite. You're creating liability after liability, calling them lifestyle choices. Let's talk about your relationship with investing. You probably think it's too risky or too complicated. Meanwhile, you're taking the biggest risk of all, doing nothing. The Talmud mandates that every parent teach their child three things: Torah, a trade, and swimming. Why swimming? Because it's a survival skill. Today, financial literacy is your survival skill, but you're choosing to drown. Your excuses are pathetic, and yes, I'm being harsh because you need to hear this. I'll start saving when I make more money. No, you won't. If you can't manage $1,000, you won't manage $10,000. I'm too busy to budget. Really? Too busy to spend 30 minutes a week securing your financial future? I'll figure it out later. Later? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. But you're not even planting seeds, you're eating them. The real problem? You're financially illiterate, and worse, you're comfortable with it. You spend more time choosing a Netflix show than reviewing your expenses. You know more about celebrity gossip than compound interest. You can quote sports statistics, but can't explain how a basic investment works. This isn't just ignorance, it's willing ignorance. And in Jewish wisdom, that's the worst kind. Want to know why you'll probably still be in this same position next year? Because even as you're hearing this, you're probably thinking, this doesn't fully apply to me, or my situation is different. No, it's not. The laws of financial wisdom are like the laws of gravity. They apply whether you believe in them or not. But here's the pivot point, the moment where everything can change. The Talmud teaches us that true repentance begins with admission of wrong. Are you ready to admit that every financial problem you have right now is a direct result of your choices? Are you ready to acknowledge that your financial situation isn't about bad luck or circumstances, but about bad decisions? Because in our next segment, I'm going to share the central lesson that has guided Jewish financial wisdom for generations. A lesson that, if you truly understand and apply it, will transform not just your bank account, but your entire approach to money. The question is, are you ready to hear it? Or will you keep lying to yourself? Now, let me share with you the central principle that has guided Jewish financial wisdom for over 3,000 years. A principle so powerful that it has helped countless families build and maintain wealth through generations, even in the face of persecution and displacement. But I warn you, this truth might shatter everything you think you know about money. Here it is. Money is not just currency. It's a divine test of character. Every dollar that passes through your hands is a test of your wisdom, discipline, and moral fiber. The Talmud teaches us that before God judges how much money a person should have, He first observes how they handle what they already possess. Think about that for a moment. Your current financial situation, it's not just a bank statement. It's a report card on your character. Let me tell you a story from the Talmud that perfectly illustrates this. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta was known for his exceptional poverty. One day he prayed for wealth, and miraculously, a precious gem descended from heaven. But instead of celebrating, he returned it, saying, "I prefer my poverty with its spiritual tests than wealth with its material trials." Why? Because he understood something you don't. Money isn't just about having more, it's about becoming more. Your problem isn't that you don't have enough money. Your problem is that you've failed every financial test life has given you. That new iPhone? Test failed. That impulsive Amazon purchase? Test failed. That unnecessary subscription service? Test failed again. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term wealth building, you're failing the divine test of money management. The Torah tells us, "Lo signof," do not steal. But here's what most people miss. When you live beyond your means, when you accumulate debt for unnecessary purchases, you're not just stealing from creditors, you're stealing from your future self. You're stealing opportunities from your children. You're stealing peace of mind from your family. How does it feel to know that you're a thief of your own future? In Jewish tradition, we have a concept called tzaddik ben rasha, a righteous person born to a wicked one. It means that regardless of where you start, you have the power to change your destiny. But here's the part that might make you uncomfortable. The opposite is also true. You can be born to wealthy parents and still end up poor because you failed to understand this central principle about money. Let me be brutally honest. Right now, you're living as a financial slave. Proverbs 22:7 isn't just a nice quote, it's a warning. The borrower is slave to the lender. Every time you swipe that credit card, every time you take out a loan for something you don't need, you're voluntarily putting on chains. Is this the legacy you want to leave? Is this the life you want to continue living? The Talmud tells us about a wealthy man who lost everything because he couldn't distinguish between needs and wants. Sound familiar? You're doing the same thing. Every time you say, "I need this," when you really mean, "I want this," you're failing the test. Every time you choose temporary pleasure over permanent prosperity, you're failing the test. Here's what makes this principle so powerful. Once you understand that money is a test, everything changes. Your spending habits change. Your saving habits change. Your entire relationship with money transforms. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" you start asking, "Should I afford this?" Instead of thinking about what money can buy, you start thinking about what money can build. But let me be clear, this isn't about living like a miser. Jewish wisdom has never advocated for poverty. In fact, the Talmud teaches that one of the first questions will be asked in heaven is, did you conduct your business affairs with integrity? Notice, not, did you avoid business, but did you conduct business with integrity? The goal isn't to avoid money, it's to master it. You have a choice to make right now. You can continue living as a financial slave, making the same mistakes, failing the same tests, and wondering why nothing changes. Or you can accept this principle and begin transforming your financial reality today. Not next month, not when you get a raise, not when the timing is better, today. Because here's the truth that most financial advisors won't tell you. Your money problems aren't really about money at all. They're about who you are as a person. And until you change who you are, until you start passing these divine tests of character, nothing in your financial life will change. Are you ready to stop being a slave? Are you ready to start passing the tests that life and money throw at you? Or will you continue living in financial mediocrity, making excuses, and blaming everything except the person in the mirror? Because in our next segment, I'm going to share with you 5 specific steps, drawn from thousands of years of Jewish financial wisdom, that will help you put this principle into practice. But remember, these steps only work if you've accepted the central truth we just discussed. Otherwise, they're just another set of rules you'll break. Now, let me share with you 5 sacred steps that have been used by Jewish communities for generations to build and preserve wealth. But remember, knowledge without action is worthless. Each step I'm about to share has transformed countless lives, but only for those who had the courage to implement them immediately. Step 1. Conduct a brutal financial audit. The Talmud teaches, know what is above you, a seeing eye, a hearing ear, and all your deeds being recorded in a book. Think your spending isn't being tracked? Look at your bank statement. That's your book of judgment. And right now, it's probably telling a story of waste and poor choices. Here's what you need to do today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Write down every single expense from the last month. Every coffee, every subscription, every impulse buy. I want you to feel the shame of your poor decisions. One of my students did this and discovered he was spending $734 monthly on subscriptions he barely used. That's $808 a year, literally vanishing into thin air. Is this what you call managing money? Step 2. Implement the sacred third system. This isn't just another budgeting tip. It's ancient Jewish wisdom adapted for modern times. Divide your income into 3 equal parts. 1 for necessities, 1 for savings and investments, and 1 for future obligations. The Talmud teaches that a wise person divides their money this way to protect against uncertainty. But let me guess, you think you can't afford to save a third of your income. That's because you've defined necessities all wrong. Your premium cable package isn't a necessity. Your daily takeout isn't a necessity. Your brand new car isn't a necessity. Stop lying to yourself. If you can't save a third of your income, you're living beyond your means, period. Step 3. Create your debt exodus plan. Just as our ancestors had a detailed plan to leave Egypt, you need a strategic plan to leave financial slavery. List every debt you have, from highest interest rate to lowest. This is your personal Egypt. Every debt is a chain around your neck. The Rambam teaches that paying debts is not just a financial obligation, it's a moral one. Attack your debts with the same intensity our ancestors used to flee Egypt. No more minimum payments. No more "I'll pay it next month." Every extra dollar you have goes toward debt elimination. One of my students paid off $67,000 in debt in 18 months using this method. What's your excuse? Step 4. Build your financial sanctuary. In the Torah, the Jews were commanded to build a sanctuary in the desert, a place of holiness and protection. Your emergency fund is your modern-day financial sanctuary. Without it, you're one emergency away from disaster. The minimum? 6 months of living expenses saved, not invested, not tied up in crypto or stocks, saved in a separate account you never touch. This isn't optional. The Talmud teaches that a person who doesn't prepare for the future is like someone who plants without a fence. Everything they grow will be destroyed by wild animals. Your financial goals without an emergency fund, they'll be destroyed by the first unexpected expense that comes your way. Step 5. Establish your wealth generation system. The Torah commands us to teach our children, not just spiritually, but in all areas of life. Your wealth building system isn't just for you. It's for generations to come. This means setting up automatic investments, creating multiple streams of income, and learning about wealth preservation. Start with 20% of your income going into investments. Don't tell me you can't afford it. The same way you find money for nonsense, you can find money for investments. The Talmud teaches that a person should always put a third of their money into business ventures. Why? Because working for money makes you a servant. Having money work for you makes you free. But here's the critical part. These steps must be implemented as a complete system. You can't cherry-pick the easy parts and ignore the rest. That's like keeping kosher only when it's convenient. It doesn't work that way. These principles are interconnected, just as our financial lives are interconnected with our spiritual lives. And let me be crystal clear about timing. If you're waiting for the right moment to start, you're already failing. The Talmud teaches that the evil inclination never tells you, "Don't do it." It tells you, "Do it tomorrow." And tomorrow never comes. Look at your life right now. Are you proud of your financial situation? Are you teaching your children good money habits? Or are you teaching them how to live paycheck to paycheck? Are you building a legacy? Or are you building debt? These 5 steps have created more Jewish millionaires than any get-rich-quick scheme ever will. They've preserved family wealth through wars, persecutions, and economic depressions. They work, but only if you work them. In our next segment, I'll share real-life examples of people who have applied these principles and transformed their financial lives. But before we get there, you need to make a decision. Are you ready to stop making excuses and start making changes? Are you ready to leave your financial Egypt? Let me share with you 3 powerful stories that demonstrate these principles in action. These aren't just feel-good tales. They're real examples of transformation that prove these ancient principles work in today's world. First, let me tell you about Michael Cohen, a student who came to me 2 years ago. He was drowning in $127,000 of debt, working 2 jobs, and still falling behind. His story probably sounds familiar to you. Credit cards maxed out, car payments he couldn't afford, and a lifestyle that was slowly killing him. But here's where his story diverts from yours. He decided to change. Michael didn't just listen to advice, he acted on it. Remember the sacred third system I taught you? He implemented it immediately, even though everyone told him it was impossible. He moved into a smaller apartment, sold his luxury car, and cut every unnecessary expense. Was it comfortable? No. But as the Talmud teaches, the way to wisdom begins with discomfort. Within 18 months, Michael had paid off $89,000 of his debt. Today, he has an emergency fund, investments growing, and most importantly, peace of mind. The same principles that guided our ancestors guided him: delayed gratification, disciplined spending, and unwavering commitment to financial freedom. But let me tell you an even more powerful story, one from the 1800s that's still relevant today. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky fled Europe with nothing but his Torah knowledge and arrived in America during the Great Depression. He could have chosen to live on charity, but he refused. Instead, he opened a small grocery store while continuing his Torah studies. What's remarkable isn't just that he survived. It's how he built wealth during one of the worst economic times in history. He followed the principle of first fruits, setting aside a portion of every dollar before spending any. He kept meticulous records of every transaction, just as I've been telling you to do. When others were focused on making quick money, he focused on building sustainable wealth. By the time he passed away, he had not only built significant wealth, but had taught these principles to hundreds of others. His grocery store became a school of financial wisdom. Why? Because he understood what you need to understand: that wealth building isn't about getting rich quick. It's about applying timeless principles consistently. Now, let me share a story that might hit closer to home. Sarah Goldstein, a single mother of 3, came to me last year. She was making $45,000 a year and thought it was impossible to save anything. Sound familiar? But instead of accepting her situation, she decided to apply these principles rigorously. First, she did what you're probably afraid to do. She faced her numbers honestly. Every expense, every debt, everything written down. Then she implemented the sacred third system, even though it seemed impossible. How? She turned her skills into a side business, doing bookkeeping from home after her kids went to sleep. The Talmud teaches that when a person is brought to judgment, they are asked, "Did you conduct your business affairs faithfully?" Sarah took this literally. She wasn't just working for money, she was building a legacy. Within 6 months, her side business was making more than her day job. Today, she has multiple streams of income, investments growing, and most importantly, she's teaching her children these same principles. But here's what makes these stories different from the usual success stories you hear. They're not about lucky breaks or special talents. They're about ordinary people applying extraordinary wisdom. The same wisdom that's been preserved in our tradition for generations. The same wisdom I'm offering you right now. Think about the Rothschild family. How did they build and maintain wealth for generations? By following these exact principles. Nathan Rothschild, who started as a textile trader in Manchester, built his fortune by following the principle of the sacred thirds and never deviating from it, even when opportunities for quick profits arose. The Talmud tells us about Rav Papa, who became wealthy by brewing beer. But it wasn't just his product that made him successful. It was his adherence to principles. He never borrowed money for expansion until he had saved enough to cover potential losses. He kept precise records of every transaction. He treated every business dealing as a sacred trust. These aren't just stories, they're blueprints for your success. But here's the difference between them and you. They acted. They didn't just listen to wisdom, they applied it. They didn't make excuses, they made changes. They didn't wait for the perfect moment, they started immediately. Look at yourself right now. Are you more like Michael before his transformation, making excuses and staying stuck? Or are you ready to be like Michael after, taking action and changing your life? Are you going to be like Sarah, who refused to let her circumstances define her future? Or will you keep telling yourself that your situation is different, special, impossible to change? Because in our final segment, I'm going to give you specific action steps to start your own transformation story. But remember, the greatest story ever told is worthless if you're not willing to be its hero. Let me leave you with a final truth that will either set you free or keep you enslaved, depending on what you choose to do with it. Everything we've discussed today, the principles, the steps, the stories, they're all worthless if you don't take action right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, now. You see, I've shared with you the same financial wisdom that has guided the Jewish people through centuries of prosperity and hardship, the same principles that have created more generational wealth than any modern financial strategy. But knowledge without action is like a seed without soil. It will never grow into anything meaningful. Look at where you are right now. Really look. Your bank account, your debts, your financial anxiety. None of this is accidental. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're a product of your choices. The Talmud teaches us that every person is led down the path they choose to walk. Which path are you choosing? I've shown you how people just like you have transformed their financial lives. Michael went from drowning in debt to building wealth. Sarah went from struggling single mother to successful business owner. They weren't special. They weren't lucky. They simply decided to stop making excuses and start making changes. But let me be brutally honest with you one last time. Most people watching this video won't change. They'll nod their heads, maybe even take some notes, but they'll go right back to their old habits. Why? Because change is uncomfortable, and most people prefer the comfort of their familiar problems over the discomfort of growth. Which person are you? Are you the one who will close this video and continue living in financial mediocrity, making the same mistakes and blaming everyone but yourself? Or are you the rare individual who will take these timeless principles and use them to transform your life? The choice is yours, but understand this. Every day you delay is another day you choose to remain a slave to your debts, a slave to your poor habits, a slave to your financial ignorance. The Torah tells us that our ancestors were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. How many more years will you choose to be a slave to your financial chaos? Here's what I want you to do right now, not later, right now. First, hit that subscribe button. Why? Because this is just the beginning. I'll be sharing more ancient wisdom that can transform your financial life, and you don't want to miss it. Second, leave a comment below telling me which of the 5 steps you're committing to implement today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Make it public. Let your word be your bond. As the Talmud teaches, one who breaks their word is like one who worships idols. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. The Talmud teaches that when we help others, we help ourselves. If these principles can transform your life, imagine what they could do for someone else who's struggling. Remember, financial freedom isn't just about having more money. It's about becoming the person worthy of wealth. The principles I've shared with you today aren't just financial strategies. They're character-building tools that have been tested and proven for thousands of years. You can continue living like everyone else, paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, stressed about money, or you can choose to be different. You can choose to apply these principles and join the ranks of those who have used this wisdom to build lasting wealth and security. The poverty you're experiencing, whether it's financial, spiritual, or both, is waiting for your decision. Will you continue to wander in your financial desert, or are you ready to enter your promised land of prosperity? Every great journey begins with a single step. The journey to financial freedom begins with a decision you must make right now. Not after you watch another video, Not after you read another book, not after you consult with more people. Now. The same God who split the sea for our ancestors is watching you right now, waiting to see what you'll do with the wisdom you've received. Will you be like the generation that feared to enter the promised land, making excuses and dying in the desert? Or will you be like Caleb and Joshua, who saw the opportunity and seized it with faith and courage? The choice is yours. The wisdom has been shared. The path has been shown. What happens next depends entirely on you. May the Almighty bless you with the wisdom to choose correctly and the strength to act decisively. May you find the courage to break free from financial slavery and enter your own promised land of prosperity. Shalom.